The guy of a life. Come on. You going somewhere fun in August?
We have my husband's family has a cabin up in Pennsylvania in the 800 acres in a lake, and
That's wonderful.
get a remote.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right, recording in progress. We'll wait just a couple of minutes for our chairman to arrive. And then we'll get this meeting started, but just be respectful that we are being recorded. All right, well.
Was it supposed to rain today?
Yes, but later. But there were thunderstorm warnings on the car, but it was for inland. So is it a dog in each arm? Is that what did it?
Well, yeah, luckily my dogs are trained to leash. I partially dislocated my shoulder about 3 years ago. Trying to get it fixed.
There you go.
With more help.
Joel was the first one that said he was coming, right?
Yes.
So he probably
Traffic,
hasn't changed that, yeah.
Traffic.
Yep.
We'll blame it on traffic.
Yes.
There's a lot of traffic southbound and eastbound toward the Ports Authority.
I'm sure. I just got off the bridge. I'm sure it's crazy down there.
I think that's going to be quite well attended.
Yeah.
I heard that through our Innovate site, there was 496 comments. Written comments.
Planning Commission's gonna read all of them?
There we go. I have no idea how that will work.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Welcome.
Okay. Hit every stoplight twice.
All right, Jeff is on the phone, but we'll start with the
Reading.
reading of the protocols.
Okay.
You're okay? Scott has this with us. Thumbs up.
Here we go. All right, I can apologize for the delay. This is the June 7th, 2023 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Present are Amanda Barton, Ruthie Ravenel, Jeff Webb, Joel Adrian. Present from planning staff, Eric Schultz. These proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We'll conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable, no one objects to the application. The matter is uncontested. The board reserves the right to ask questions of staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application, open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application, or defer. Deny or defer the application. Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do three things. One, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Two, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. Three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate, make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that there is not less than a quorum present and qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good. The character of the district cannot be harmed by the granting of the variance. Okay, so that then leads us to our first item, which would be A1, which is going to be a review of the minutes for the May 3rd, 2023 meeting. And any questions?
Just getting all swept up over it. Sorry.
Yes, it was that good.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no changes. If there's a motion for approval in a second.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Ruthie was here, so-
I was not here, so I
I'll
can't.
second.
So motions for approval. All in favor? Aye. In favor? Opposed? None. The motion is approved. 3.
I just realized I forgot a pen. Does anybody have an extra pen?
You can have mine.
She is. So what do you mean?
All right, so then there are no deferred applications, correct? Correct. Our next item would be item B1, which is 1471 Folly Road, TMS 33400000052, is zone GB, FRO. Variance from section 54, 229.7 to allow a reduced landscape buffer width.
So this is the application for 1471 Folly Road. This is a little postage stamp site parcel that fronts on Folly Road. I don't know how long ago it was probably subdivided out of that larger piece is a church property. It's zone GB, but it is in the Folly Road overlay district. Some years ago, the city, along with the town of James Island and the county, looked at a plan called Rethink Folly, and out of that, the city adopted some regulations, which we have in an overlay form. You can see the church property, and then this little site is basically just a grass field. There's the existing conditions, small little swale that traverses across it. This is an overlay of the project. The owner would like to build a small office and then basically a storage type facility. I'll let the applicant describe more about what the owner plans to store in there. I believe it's collector vehicles, automobiles. So under our standard landscape ordinance, Folly Road is a class 5 road and would require a 25-foot landscape buffer. However, the Folly Road overlay looked very closely at what this corridor should look like in the future with future development, and also thinking of it as a complete street, if you will. All modes of transportation were looked at. So it states that on the west side of Folly, there should be a 35-foot buffer, and it doesn't specify that that buffer is from an existing easement. It just says from the property line, there should be 35-foot buffer. Within that western zone, that buffer zone, there should be a 10-foot multi-use path and landscape. In this case, we have the Dominion that has a power overhead transmission line there. So the applicant's working with Dominion on the placement of the walk in that easement. And then, of course, we have to be very careful about what plant material we choose. So 35-foot puts a little bit of a hardship on the property. That's that further dashed line back in front of the front facade of the building on the right of the parking. But that closer dash line is if it were to meet the 25-foot landscape buffer, not adhering to putting it on the back side of the buffer or the easement like the standard ordinance says. So staff feels that there's definitely a hardship in this case. Here's a close-up again. The dimension 25 foot from the property line the large multi-use path, and then some plantable area. It's just the parking requirements. They need a handicap space and then the minimum park, so they have to pull that a little bit closer. This is going through DRB. It's going to be a very good-looking small building with parking out front. The proposed landscape plan, which I have not verified, it's what the project's making its way through our technical review committee process, but we asked that they get verification from Dominion on the proposed plant material to be planted within or just outside their easement, so we don't put canopy trees that will someday be severely pruned and what have you. And again, it is a transmission line, so that's the beginnings of a landscape plan. A little bit closer. There's a photo. So staff recommends approval to maintain the 25-foot buffer adjacent to the right-of-way and provide a landscape plan for both DRB and TRC review and approval.
All right, thank you, Eric. Is the applicant present? Would you like to? Okay.
Yeah, I'm Trey Linton with Forsberg Engineering. I think Eric did a great job of summarizing the hardship that we have here. As he mentioned at the beginning, this is a postage stamp property, his words. Just wanted to reiterate, if you have a 35-foot buffer on a 13,000 square foot piece of property, which we have here, the buffer itself represents about 27% of the overall property. So I feel like that presents a hardship that we're just asking for a minor adjustment.
All right, thank you. Anybody else present that'd like to be heard in favor of the application? Is there anybody present that's opposed? Close the application to the public and be open to the board for discussion, questions, or a motion.
Right, are y'all piping that, the ditch?
We're piping underneath the driveway, but not the full ditch.
Okay, so.
The ditch will remain as it is.
Oh, okay, it's,
Just
yeah,
underneath
I was
the
looking at the
driveway.
landscape plan.
It's actually between the sidewalk and Folly Road is where the ditch is. So we're gonna pipe the driveway itself, but the rest of the ditch will remain.
Questions or discussion?
I'll make a motion, we move to approve the staff recommendations.
I'll second.
Conditions by Amanda, seconded by Ruthie. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Favor.
Aye in favor. Any opposed? It's approved. Unanimous. Thank you. All right. Our next item will be item B2, 1137 Folly Road. Request a variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 4 grand trees. Request a special exception from 54.327 to allow the removal of 1 grand tree. It's TMS number 33708000119, zoned LB. Eric.
Okay, this property is located on Folly, just south of Pittsford Court. There's actually a little parcel that's owned, so it doesn't touch Pittsford. And it's due north of the little strip mall that has the Kickin' Chicken in it. If you're familiar with that before you get to the Kmart. You can see that it's basically a narrow triangular shaped lot. Oh, wrong way here. Zoned LD. I think over the life of my career here at the city, I've probably seen 3 or 4 different plans for this property. Nothing's ever gotten out of the ground, but I think this one may have some momentum behind it. This is the application. The existing condition minus the contours, trees. This is the plan overlaid on the grand tree and protected tree survey. So what's unique about this is obviously the shape. When the city developed the development shopping center to the south, we worked out, I don't know if it was SCDOT driven or just the ownership groups at the time, but as you can see, the proposed driveway is an existing driveway to the left, and it's on an easement. So folks can pull in that driveway, and then they make a hard left to enter into the shopping center parking lot. So that's kind of a fixed element. DOT, what else is unique is that where you see that what appears to be a detention pond is a small little isolated wetland. And there's a pipe that actually leaves that wetland, so water flows out of that into the pipe into Folly Road system. And that complicates the design of anything that were to occur on this site because of the city's stormwater management requirements. So they're actually working with the adjacent neighbor not to drain to Folly Road, but drain into their system within their shopping center. So we've been on site. It's a site that's been subject to storm damage. A lot of trees have blown over and have gotten beat up by recent storms. It's kind of not manicured, but they go in occasionally and just push hog, keep it kind of a tidy looking site. But we have these trees that are peppered across the site, and the proposal is to remove 2 that require a variance. There are 4 laurel oaks and then 1 water oak. The proposal is to design and build a daycare facility. So drop off and pickup is something that is very critical to that whole operation. So you can see like a one-way loop from some parking that would be out front of the building and then to the exit, a potential exit drive and entry, and then overflow parking. You can see the big boxes are the underground storage leading into kind of a modified wetland system, and then it would exit and we go toward its, again, this is in the Folly Road overlay. You can see that they're holding the 35-foot landscape buffer with the 10-foot meandering path around the trees. And so this is a close-up. The water oak is the one that's on the plan southwest corner of the building. The daycare facility needs a playground. That's what the crosshatch or the stippled area would be. There's a couple of trees in question there that I don't think I'd want my children playing under. And then, of course, the grading and the stormwater for the other 2 laurel oaks. The Folly Road overlay also speaks to the old ordinance or the existing ordinance outside of the overlay would require like a 25-foot landscape buffer against the residential properties to the north, plan north. But the Folly Road overlay allows a 20-foot, and then they could actually reduce that down to 10 by incorporating the fence. So I believe the applicant has spoken with some neighbors. And this kind of depicts the complicated stormwater system for such a small site. But you're dealing with a site that already has a bowl and collects water in that wetland, and they got to get it to drain in a positive manner. So these are the photos of the trees. Again, you know, they're over mature, in my opinion, laurel oaks. This is the water oak, and what's interesting about this set of slides is the applicant actually used the drone to kind of point out some of their structural defects, but these were I think C's and D's being pruned by power company. The drone can get up closer to some storm damage in the crowns. So if you want to talk to any specific tree, I can back up and look at the write-up on it if you need be. Cavities evident. There's the summary. In really of high quality. Both being the B grade tree. So staff recommends approval, the condition that, or with the notion that, you know, I believe the hardship is met with the extraordinary conditions of the site, the wetland. They've spoken to the neighbors. I don't think it will be a detriment to the public good and so on and so forth, but must plant 127.5 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the site. That's going to be planting a forest, and that's okay. Young trees, good quality young trees. If they can't get all those inches on site, we'll possibly entertain a contribution to the city street tree program. Must use 4-foot chain link fencing for all the other protected and branch trees to be preserved. Must be, have a Y in there. Must have a certified arborist tree to prune the protected branch trees to be preserved, and must provide a landscape plan for both Tier B and Tier C review and approval.
All right, Eric, thank you. The applicant present, would you like to be heard?
We just brought a full-size sheet. If any of y'all want to look at this up close, otherwise I'll just leave it down here. My name is Andy Bajowski with Barrier Island Engineering. I also brought a couple of items from neighbors, and I kind of explained that email. That's a letter of support from the neighbor immediately adjacent to this tree that's on the north property line. It's so close to the property line, it's hard to even tell if the tree is fully on our side. We met with them individually to gain their interest or opposition to removing that. So that's what the email is from there. About a week and a half ago, we held a public meeting with the neighborhood, handed out flyers, had one person attend. That's the sign-in sheet, the second sheet there. The only question she expressed was in regard to the tree adjacent to the neighborhood sign up here, which is not actually on our property or part of this request at all. So I think Eric did a pretty thorough job of trying to explain the troubles here with this site. The wetland in the center certainly proposes a little bit of a challenge. We're proposing to do a constructed stormwater wetland here for stormwater detention, water quality, and to satisfy the stormwater ordinance's LID requirements, as well as under a combination with underground detention for special protection area. So kind of blocks us into a strange stormwater layout. The site itself is pretty narrow, combined with a 35-foot buffer. We really don't have any other placement for the building besides the back left corner of the site. So that's the hardship that we envision here, is that the combination of the lot width and the 35-foot buffer kind of block us into only one site location for the building. And then as well as the DHEC requirement for playground area, we're trying to keep that as far away from Folly Road and buffered from Folly Road as possible. So I think that in the center of the site, separated with landscape buffer and a constructed wetland that will have plantings there is the best option and the best possibility for laying out the site.
Thank you. Is there anybody else present that would like to speak in favor? Is there anybody present that is opposed?
And I failed to mention that for all four items, we did not receive any written comments through Innovate.
Okay, thank you. We'll close this application to the public. Open the board. Discussion, comments, questions. I'll start. I think that what Andy said is correct. The back left corner is where you would put the structure on this property, and 100% would put the play area on the backside of that wetlands and buffer as much from Folly. So I think that it's been thought through and logically planned. So supportive of the application.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, the health of the trees sort of seals it for me.
Jeff, any thoughts over there?
The 1, 2, 3, 4, they're all kind of in the center. You said the ones at the playground, Water Oak.
No, so the two
Laurel
in the
Oak.
playground are Laurel Oaks, the two in the wetland are Laurel Oaks, the Water Oak is on the
By
corner
the
of the
building.
building. 4 requiring a variance, 1 special exception, fact finding.
The Water Oak special exception.
Yes.
Tricky site.
Well, exactly, and I think it's to have and the building's not even very big. And to have the building function, it makes perfect sense to put it there, and the Water Oak would never survive the construction being so close. Don't have the tree be taken off and burning, so match the ones along Folly. But I'm in support. I make a motion we move for approval, the staff recommendations.
Second. For approval with staff conditions by Amanda, seconded by Jeff. All in favor of that motion?
Aye in favor.
Aye in favor. Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you for the presentation. Our next item would be item B3,
Tricky site.
which is 9 Clinton Avenue, TMS 46414001119, Zone UP. Request a special exception from section 54.327 to allow the move of 1 grand tree. Eric?
This is the application submitted. This is actually property owned by the city of Charleston and a project under capital projects through housing and community development. Again, you can see that this is a flag-shaped lot with the majority of the building or property on Huntington. Zone UP, this is an effort done a few years back where it's an incentive-based zoning. Basically, if you wanted to do higher densities and do some height, but this is going to be the future home of the Hope Center, which is it deals with the homelessness crisis we have in Charleston and the region. The structure has been demolished, as well as the other 3 homes that are owned by the city to the left, and that will become a multifamily project there, but the Hope Center is phase 1. So we're dealing with just the yellow area, and the structure has been removed. So here's the layout. So, administrative type offices, meeting space, and then the little structure that goes up the little flagpole portion of it is actually enclosed space for the needy to take refuge out of the weather or what have you. Will be managed through the operations of the Navy. But in the front right or front left corner, you have 1 Water Oak surrounded by Chinaberry volunteers. I assume that proved to be of a size to be considered a grand tree. So Chinaberry we consider invasive. We want to get rid of those. But the Water Oak is a special exception. Form 26-inch leaning. See it here. I don't know if there was an old fence line there or something that these trees just kind of became volunteers and grew in size. Staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 13 caliber incision native canopy trees on the project site. Must relocate the palms. There's 3 palms, if you noted, on the site that can be transplanted. If not, they plant new ones if they don't make it. And musty again. Why if I have a wall?
And now thinks it's the correct part.
But it's a base. Must provide landscape plan for staff review and approval.
Thank you, Eric. Is the applicant present? Sir. Like to be heard.
Mike Johnson with Fordberg Engineering. Eric covered everything. This is, like I said, a public project that the city needs to help support the homelessness. Tree is a D-rated tree. Other than that, there's slam dunk. I'm here for any questions you have for me.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else present who'd like to speak in favor? Any opposed? Application should be closed to the public and go to the board. Questions or comments or a motion? I think it's a
It
special
doesn't look
exception.
very grand from the picture.
It's a special exception, so it's fact finding versus the variance test request, so.
I might just add that you see kind of like a plaza area to the west. That's planned to someday be in concert with the multifamily development. So there'd be like an area. What is that white line? Is that like a seat wall or something?
It's a planter.
A planter.
Yeah, it's gonna be a raised planter, right? So they can plant vegetables and all. It's right in the middle of
And
that.
then this will relate to the structure and the multifamily.
Which we don't know what that is yet, they're just blocking it out, basically.
That's right.
Other trees.
Will they be coming in for those other trees?
They will be. I think one is a D-grade magnolia. I've been on site. A lot of this is hackberry and chinaberry back in here, but this is a magnolia that existed in the front yards of the,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
got a
yeah.
big, huge cavity in it. But, I don't know until the city, does I guess the RFP for the designer and the architectural team, what have you.
A lot of sidewalk out there, but.
Well, Cunnington does not have sidewalks at
Sidewalks
all.
now, yeah.
So the on-street parking is being discussed. We're not sure if it will be up against the cemetery or not, but it's hopeful that there will be on-street parking, but still maintain the character around the historic cemetery.
Make a motion to approve staff recommendations.
I'll second.
All right, so motion for approval by Jeff, second by Ruthie. With staff conditions, all in favor of that motion? Aye. In favor? Any opposed? It's approved unanimous 4-0. Thank you. All right, so our final item on the agenda is going to be item B4. It's Clements Ferry Road, Canaway Peninsula, TMS 271-0001-035 Zone GB. Request variance from section 54.327 to allow the grant trees.
This is the application. A little letter for the hardship. So this is, for some of you, this may jog your memory. We dealt with this entire tract now twice. It came through for the original approvals for grand tree removals, and then they just extended that approval not too long ago. I think it was last year early. But the owner of the tract had been in negotiations with the city on providing a lot for a much needed fire station in the Canaway Peninsula area. So they did not address what they thought will be and could be the city parcel. So we addressed a lot of grand trees, but we didn't do this section. So I'll explain it further here. In addition to this project, a lot of history here. The city, Berkeley County, and SCDOT have been in negotiations for years about how to improve this lower section of Clements Ferry Road and where to introduce a signal. A lot of back and forth with Marina Drive. The final decision was to have it associated with this future development, have it align across from Beresford Run and have the signal there. The firehouse wasn't driving all of that, but it was part of the discussion. So you can see that it's a wooded site. We have Cooper River Farms, the multifamily development at the rear end of Enterprise Boulevard. Have some kind of a truck depot to the south. So this is the Grand Tree survey for that southern piece. We addressed some trees where that box is, but we didn't address where there's a higher concentration of trees a little bit to the left. And again, I'll get into it here. So this is a phase of many that are coming through our technical review committee process. I'll just call this phase one. This phase subdivides the property, creates a public right-of-way opposing Beresford Run, and provides a connection to the south. Phase two of and then also a drive that connects to the north to Enterprise Boulevard, because you may have remembered you saw a whole concept plan for multiple buildings on this site, ranging from retail to office to eateries. But this box in yellow was left out of that because the owner was in negotiations with the city for firehouse. Phase two is just the widening required on Clements Ferry Road, the turn lanes and the signalization and the modification to Beresford Run. And then we get to site specific. So we don't have a parcel created. That still could be massaged a little bit here and there. We're not at final plat. We have a preliminary plat, but until we get further down the road, there may be a shift in pretty much the proposed road. Plan left is fixed, but the property line to the right may move a little bit here and there. We're not quite sure. But the firehouse design is moving forward. Obviously, the apparatus would travel down the main public road, turn left onto the connector road, and then pull through the facility, and then exit through a parking lot, basically, which is a little atypical for firehouse operations. Usually they enter right onto their road, but due to the shape and so to complicate matters more, the Clements Ferry Road is a little bit of super elevated there in the curve. It's a little raised as it makes that curve. So Beresford Run is at a lower elevation. That north or western curve is higher. So they have to fill quite a bit to meet that curve line on Clements Ferry. So you can see all the contour lines where it meets the intersection. And then to have stormwater complicate matters even further, it's a master design, and because the property falls to the south, the road has to be at certain elevations to make the hydrology work, so therefore it puts both the front property, we're not sure what will happen, the firehouse property, in a bowl, so they have to fill both. The front property, we are assuming if that line stays hard on that B grade tree, that it will meet its 15 trees per acre requirement with the buffer out front, but we're not sure exactly the line there. So I'll talk about that, but we really need to have the project move forward. This is a step because of the Grand Tree issue. Here's a little bit more about the hydrology, how the site has to be built up to meet the road elevations. So the trucks entering the firehouse will actually be riding up a pretty good grade to get into the firehouse, and then they'll be level leaving. See there. So fill and trees don't mix. So I went out and did my take on what the tree grades were, and we had 1B along the property line. Everything else was C's and D's and maybe another B, but we can go through these. An F, storm damage. cavities, storm damage. Lightning strike probably, most likely. Well, it's got half a crown that's viable, still green tissue on it. So this is a letter that I sent you all this morning, having received it from our project manager, explaining more about the history and the private developer working with the city on this site. The staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 255 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the site. That's going to be impossible, basically. So basically, I don't think the city is treated any differently. I guess they'll have to build this cost into the budget, and they'll then basically cut a check back to the city street tree program, and the city can plant trees elsewhere, but must plant the necessary. So we're not sure of the exact acreage, so we're building into the condition here that the protected tree requirement, which most likely won't be met. Maybe a few trees around the perimeter. We'll work out that based on the size of the property and the calculations, and then must provide a landscape plan for staff review and approval.
All right, thank you, Eric. Applicant present.
Mr. Globin with Cement Whiteside. I'll outline a couple of things from the letter that we wrote. But I think they're just pretty- history of the site, whatnot. Obviously, the first point is there's ongoing negotiations between the property owner, who's Cato, and the city of Charleston. And if successful, the partial plan for a future fire station. The fire station will be accessed from the south by proposed Tongue River. This is proposed road, future name be Tongue River, which connects to Queens Ferry Road, opposite of Beresford, for the future intersection. As Eric noted, Queens Ferry Road is about 5 feet higher because of the widening, the recent widening over the last 5 years. So that's the storm drainage debacle with the grading, and then also gravity sewer to connect to an existing pump station at the rear apartment complex is also an item that's driving the finished floor elevations. 2 items on the variance criteria that I would like to outline would be, number 2, we stated that the other properties within the vicinity do not show the same quality of lower distributions of grand trees. And just north of this project site, across from it's on the parent parcel, but just north of the proposed road, there's a large cluster of grand trees that will be planned to be preserved for the overall development. So yeah, you can kind of see them right there, all the trees north of the red line. And then lastly, I'd like to note that between the city and the city's internal staff and the city's design team and us, who's working with the developers and the owners, we've come up with at least 8 test fit options. So we have looked at the site a lot, and the design that was presented was deemed the most feasible. Lastly, obviously he mentioned that this went through BZA years ago, but it's been planned for the fire station since about 2018. So it's been in the works for a little while.
All right, thank you. Anybody else present in favor that'd like to be heard? Is there anybody opposed? Close this application to the public as well and open it to the board for discussion, questions. And so Grant, I'll start. So Eric, when I look at this drawing here, so is this, every tree is being taken out. There's not a single circle that doesn't have an exit.
That's right.
So then the 15 trees per acre is fully dependent on the other site that just hasn't been developed yet? Or is it not getting developed?
Basically,
Coming through anytime.
right. So we, again, to back up, we addressed grand trees only on the whole parent tract, except They were in negotiations with the city, so I don't know what the mindset was, let the city deal with their trees, I guess. So they didn't deal with this little section, knowing that it could potentially go to the city. So my question was once we go through a subdivision process and we come up with a number of different parcels, each parcel has to stand on its own as far as a tree protection ordinance. So we address grand trees, like Spencer mentioned. If we had that image, this was like a big like courtyard, open space with buildings fronting on it, what have you. So we went through that. We did not address protected trees. So if this line holds, because we're just in a preliminary paper plat scenario, and they haven't closed on the exact acreage and all that. So there's maybe a little wiggle room here. We don't know. But whatever happens here, based on this line and the acreage here, we got the 15 trees per acre met with the buffer and the perimeter. This one, because of the grading that's happening, we will address protected trees just through the condition. We won't ask it to come back to this board, but we'll make the calculations based on the final acreage and add that to the grand tree numbers.
So effectively, we're treating it as if that is a variance request.
We're treating it as the city needs to understand whether or not this can move forward with the grand tree removals, and the protected trees will just be an added inches.
Added mitigation.
Right.
Problem with the added mitigation is it's just our tax dollars. That's it. So, you know, the city doesn't make money, they take the money. They just allocating it in different places there versus somewhere else. So it's almost unfair. Struggle with that.
That's what you're saying.
But, you know, so it's not the seller, you can't put the burden on him. It's the applicant that's purchasing, so. But, I don't know if they've investigated other sites and this is where it's come to, then it's, you know, your hands are pretty much tied. I will say that luckily, other than the one tree, most of them were unattractive and bad form and all that. But,
Still habitat, yeah. So is the parcel, when you showed the larger picture, the parcel on the other side of the road, has that come to plan review? The one with the several B grade trees?
No, we have, you know, there was a site plan submitted to address the grand trees. You know, who knows what the market, but we won't vary greatly from those footprints that were approved. I mean, there's a little tweak in footprint possibly, but if it's a major change, then we'll have to come back and address something where grand trees on those residual. We don't know what the further subdivision will be, whether it's one. Right now, this road here, this as you can see, it's being designed. They have an idea, obviously, where buildings will be. This is not a public road. It's a glorified driveway, as this is not a public road. That's an ingress egress. It's you know, we annexed this property in with that already in place in a pump station down in the Cooper River Farms, and then we developed Cooper River Farms. But they have an idea of what they're doing here as far as building, but whether there's property lines introduced or what have you, it's unknown at this point, except for this one to carve out the city property from this residual tract, if you will, once you subdivide out the public road here and something happened here. We're stating that this just shows the grand trees, but there's other trees in the buffer that based on this line, they've done a rough calculation that will meet the 15 trees per acre requirement. This obviously can't with all the necessary fill. But we can't do a calculation because we don't have a parcel yet.
So the even though the trees on the other parcel were referenced in the presentation, it really doesn't mean anything because we can't hold those to being, you know, not allowed to remove those trees. It's not part of this application nor this parcel we're looking at. So
You talking about the one grand tree being saved or the?
No,
Should-
that's
when
not
you
gonna
go
be
back,
saved.
when you
Which
go back one more slide. I
Where you
think.
wanna go?
Right, well, maybe this one. So I believe when the gentleman spoke, he was referencing these trees up here will
Right.
remain. We don't really know that they're gonna
Yeah,
remain
yeah.
because they may decide
I
to
think
change what's
actually a
going on
condition,
here.
I think a condition, if I would have to dig out that file, but he addressed the entire piece except for what was viewed as potentially this future city lot. That no further grand tree, I think you all made a condition
I
that they
think
come
you're
back for further, so they have to work within
Okay.
the
Because
approved.
we're tired of that happening.
Right,
Right.
I think that was a condition.
I understand that none of these trees on this parcel will remain because it's 5 feet lower than where it needs to be. Glad I'm not driving that fire truck up the hill.
Well, at least it's on the way in, not way out.
They picked their lot well.
Well, Beth said you looked at what, how many sites?
Development. We also looked at 3 or 4 others on Clemens Ferry. The problem is that we're trying to stay as close to the existing fire station 20 as we can for response time and emergency coverage. So anything else we looked at was putting us farther and farther towards the fire station 21 towards Snellyfield.
So is the existing one the one that was sort of a temporary?
That's the one that's on Marina Drive.
Okay, that was one of the first things out there, right? That goes all the way down,
And that's
sort of a long straight.
Well, it's not even in, is that even in the city? I think we leased that building or
release that building. and we're
it's
releasing
on Marina Drive. If I back up here, maybe. I might have picked it up in aerial. So,
Yeah, that's going back a ways.
get my bearings right. So here is, so this was critical. This was negotiated with the Berkeley County, the city, and SCDOT, because there was a lot of push to have it here at Marina Drive. I believe this is, this is the contractor. Yeah, so here's Pine Drive. Yeah, so this is our fire station right here, which we rent or lease. And I don't even think that's in the city.
Right, but it's serving a huge
Right.
population.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, especially with the growth.
Yeah.
I mean, so I understand the need for it.
And I would like to note that according to the fire station is not yet moved. Instructions.
Well, I don't, okay. Are they all variances?
Yeah, it's a set
Yes.
of
Yes,
variance for all
all
of them.
variants. I don't like it. Especially when we could see a master plan come through and then, something like that was basically omitted from what we were looking at initially, which is nothing, no reflection on the fire station aspect. I mean, I don't know how that happened, but, if it gets approved, I would have to say, I, for one, would stand firm on our previous statement of no more grand trees taken out of this overall development. I don't care what doesn't fit. It's inconvenient.
Certainly, we were given a plat however long ago.
Yeah.
And the land was able to be used and developed, so I don't see how a change would trigger item 3.
Yeah.
Again, because we've shown that you can use it, so I guess that's some consolation, so if there's other questions.
And, I don't have a problem with waiving the city having to put into the street trees. Unless it can be the developer that does it, but they're not the applicant, so we can't make that happen, right? We don't have that written on our paper today for some reason.
Well, they're the owner. And Seaman Whiteside, I guess representing Cato, not necessarily the city, is the applicant.
So can't you make Cato pay?
That's above my pay grade with the negotiations on the lot.
We have a
Some
hand
if it's,
raised.
Perhaps someone could respond to that if necessary.
Okay. Please state your name and address.
share the
My name is
burden.
Gary Collins, Single Whiteside, have as much history on this property as when it started, so to that response, we would probably not have created the parcel in this configuration if it wasn't for a fire station crew. So I understand the comment, but we would have had a plan that potentially would have adjusted to not deal with those trees if not for the need for the fire station and the proximity to Clements Ferry and some of the other conditions that a fire station required, as well as the north-south connections that are part of a larger master plan to make those work. So dimensionally, that was all planned. And then in the hope that a fire station, and I did probably another dozen scenarios of how a fire station may or may not work on this property. So I just said, I understand where you're coming from, but that's the reason that the owner is submitting the plan, because it hasn't finalized. And so, but a lot of these things would have, if it wasn't fire station, we'd have had a different probably scenario to address that. Not the grading, perhaps, but that. So that's what I would just ask.
Thank you.
To approve, because I don't think we have an option not to.
But what do we want to do about the, I mean, I think you all had a good point with that. With the donation of the tree fund, it seems.
Well, have them donated. Another portion of each person's tax dollars going to it.
Yes, we would discount that in the negotiations.
When I write the check, that's how much $50 out. That was part of my tree donation.
Yeah, I'm not paying my full license fee this year or whatever, yeah.
So,
My goal was somehow to get, we're losing canopy, blah, 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 to get monies for parks to plant trees. I mean, so let me just clarify. So with this, if this approval moves forward, the city would then close on the property and then you would bring it through, or is the master developer bringing it through? Are they?
Can I just sit down
Yeah.
here, I think? It's a little exhausting. So the intent would be to, create the parcel first, and then the agent would be property. And right now, we've not done a thorough due diligence because we don't have a parcel to evaluate right now. But this is step one, because without those tree removals, then waterfronts.
Right. But I think my question was, does capital projects then bring it through TRC?
Yes.
Not, okay. Yeah, so when I was getting that, and it was just a comment, not I mean, I was thinking that their budget would have to, we'd figure out the monetary contributions, and then their budget would just have to grow by that, and then money would be shifted into urban forestry to plant trees, but you all can discuss that. That would be my hope, that trees are planted as a result of losing trees. It doesn't look like you'll get too many on the site.
Coverage where we can, and that our intent would never be to declare that aside. And time will probably be tweaked as well, so this may.
It's the first phase of the development for the road work and a master stormwater design and pond PRCs. So it's been through the city's hands quite a bit. And we are planning to accommodate for stormwater in the master pond. So that definitely gives a little bit of leeway for the site to potentially save some extra trees.
there's no other questions. There is a motion, Ruthie, for approval with conditions. No other discussion. Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Who did the motion?
Ruthie did the motion, so motion for approval. Ruthie, seconded by Jeff.
Can you put your recommendations back up there?
Musty.
Oh, hey, yeah.
I guess I would just say, but I'm sure that Beth would do this anyway, you know, when developing it to try, you know, if there's possibility of retaining any of the trees around the perimeter.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the best hope there, based on the grading plan, is the southern common property line with the neighbor.
Mhm.
There's like a little buffer there.
And, go to vote. All in favor of the motion for approval with staff conditions? Aye, in favor?
All in favor?
Any opposed?
Grudgingly.
It's approved. Thank you.
Grudging favor.
Thank you.
So no, there's another one out there, right? Another fire station?
That'll end the meeting.
Can we? Yeah, isn't there another one out?
There's one on
Is it
Cape
further-
Road.
Way up.
Way up.
It's
Way
further,